and great experience in the web. Is everyone hearing me? Some confirmation.
Yes, you sound great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So today, I am Alejandra Ferreira. I am your moderator today. And we're going to have a different kind of session that we used to have. We're going to have a dynamic workshop, and we're going to create side-by-side web components with this great tool. So first, let me remind you our code of conduct. This talk is being recorded to distribute around our social media. So when you register and participate in our events, you are agreeing that your image, name, or audio can be used. If you do not agree or want to be excluded of this, please tell us through our chat or contact us at Magenta Codes, or just shut down your camera. For this workshop, we will encourage you, all the participants, to ask questions in the way. So please feel free to write maybe the word question in the chat, and we will open the space for you so you can ask. Also, we want to invite you to share your experience and inspire and help other women. So please remember to mention us at Magenta Codes and the Women Tech Makers with the hashtag More Women in Tech and AMP Web Components through all social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever you think about. Also, remember that we're going to build something amazing today, so please share your photos or GitHub repos or anything that you are building on the way. So we're going to take a group photo. It's a good thing to remind us that we're breaking down barriers. And please, whoever give us permission, turn on your camera and let's take the photo. I'm going to stop presenting for a second so we can see everyone that's in the screen. Let me know, Joa, if you're ready.
Great. Okay. Done.
Okay, great. Next, let me remind us of our schedule. We're going to have a small introduction about who we are, and then we're going to have the workshop about AMP and just some closing remarks at the end. So this is the team. This is Magenta Code's leaders. We want to tell you a bit more about how this community started. So please feel free to reach us in any of our social media, or if you have later questions about some other talks or topics. Let me go back. So Magenta Codes is an initiative that started with some immigrant women currently here in Sweden that we were entering or already in the field of technology. And we faced several barriers to access information, education, or some job opportunities because of this expat status. So we started working together and exchanging ideas, so seeing the challenges. And we created this community with some initiatives of inclusion, support, development, and gender equality in this current technological revolution and economical climate. This is in alignment with the UN Sustainability Development Goals, specifically goal number 5, related to gender equality. And we are also currently now under the wings of Women Tech Makers. That is a Google community that supports women in the tech ecosystem. So for our workshop today, we're gonna introduce you guys to our speaker. It's Ben Morse today with us. He's a developer advocate at Google. He's working to help us make the web faster and more beautiful. Prior to Google, he worked at the New York Times and AOL, and before he was a full-time musician. So he earned a BA in computer science at Harvard and a Ph.D. in music at the University of California. He will talk today about AMP, that is an open source HTML framework created by Google that provides a straightforward way to create web pages that are fast, smooth loading, and prioritize the user experience above everything else. Together, we will work through 0 to AMP courses prepared by Google instructors, and we're gonna get our hands on experience. So welcome, Ben, the stage is yours.
Oh, thanks a lot. Hello, everyone. Good to see you. I guess I should probably present, shouldn't I?
Yes.
So let me see if I can just do that. All right, present now. Here we go. And drum roll, please.
Perfect.
I'm now presenting,
Yes.
but huh, are you seeing that's weird. Are you seeing my deck or something else here?
No, just your
Huh?
browser with the
Yeah, I'm seeing
presentation. But
something else. I'm seeing something saying I'm presenting. Is that what you're seeing too? Let me do this
yeah.
again because
Yes. No worries.
it's not what I expected to do at all. All right, that's weird. And here we are again. Huh, I'm seeing the same thing. Do you guys see a big slide saying web development with App Beginning course workshop? Or
Yeah,
do you
we're
see,
seeing that. Your web
oh, you
development
do, okay.
key and beginning course
Then
workshop. Yeah.
I guess Meta's changed. It used to show me what I was presenting on my screen, but it doesn't anymore. Must be a sort of feature that I didn't know about. Okay, anyway,
No worries.
hello. It's a smaller group than we usually have, although people are still joining, which is nice. So two things that will change for us. I probably won't go quite as long because it's a smaller group. Unless people start jumping in at some point, maybe we'll hold this down to an hour instead of an hour and a half or 2 hours. But also because the group is so small, please make comments or ask questions at any time. I know when you're looking at something on your screen, or if I am at least, I tend to kind of lose focus sometimes. If it's more interactive, if we're discussing things more, then it tends to be more exciting. And the group is so small. So please feel free, as she was saying, to make comments about questions in the chat, or just unmute your microphone and just say, hey, I have a question, or I have a comment, or why can't AMP do this? Can you make AMP better in some way? So I'm also looking for feedback from you as you learn about this. I'm also curious what your background is like. I don't know what level we have here. People are web developers who are working in the field, who are learning, who've used AMP before, never used AMP before. What's your
I
background
think
like?
that our community has very basic between intermediate. We have across interests, but now I think that everyone who is focused here is in web development. I currently work with web development in JavaScript, but yeah, we have data scientists, we have everything. But I think that everyone has a basic HTML knowledge. We that's so yeah. I don't know if anyone else wants to chip in and maybe say otherwise.
Okay, 4+ years, never used AMP. So you're pretty
No,
experienced.
never. I have never used AMP. It's kind of new
Yeah.
to me, so I'm pretty excited to use it and to actually facilitate some of those things that you always want to do. You always want to create your portfolio. You always want to do a bunch of things, and then you never ended up doing it because it's too much work. So maybe this will facilitate it.
I'm hoping so, yeah. Anyone else, feel free to comment in the chat, say who you are, where you're from if you want to, or you can just say what your experience is like or why you're here, or you can speak the words on your microphone if you want to.
Yeah, your mics are open. You can open them if you want to talk. Just try to not interfere maybe too much with each other and maybe
That's
ask
right.
for the word in the chat. But yeah, feel free to talk.
Well, it looks like we have some experience and mix of people from what I'm seeing. So I'm going to start talking. What I'm going to do over here is talk about AMP a little bit and what it is and why it exists. And then we'll get to all use it, which will be, I think, actually fun. And the other fun thing about this is that we're going to use Glitch, an online code editor and coding environment, which means you can actually share your project with the group. If you have trouble, you can share your link with me and I can look at it. If you're proud of what you've done, you can share it with the group, or if you wanted to share it with the group. So we actually can kind of share things together like we were in the same room, even though we're not in the same room at all. Actually, where are you all? I know that when I do these things online, people come from all over the world. Sometimes they show up from, I know this is based in Stockholm, I think, but people sometimes
Yes.
show up to things who are from Brazil or from Japan or other places. Anybody
Yeah,
from somewhere that
we have
isn't Sweden, please say hello.
people from
Boston,
Boston, India. Yeah.
India. Look at this. See, Huntsville, Alabama. Suddenly I wanted to travel. So usually every couple months we go out there and go somewhere to bring Columbia. We were there a couple of years ago. We bring this thing called the AMP Roadshow, where we go to various places in the world and meet people who are using AMP and talk to them and learn from them and vice versa. We've gone to Bogota and Berlin in the recent past. We plan to go to India this year. All these things were, we've been to Boston too. All these things were canceled. Never gone to Stockholm. These things were all canceled, of course, in March. We were going nowhere. But the advantage is that it's very easy to get on your computer and see people from all over the world as long as you've got an internet connection and some data. So that's been the nice part about this. I mean, it's been mostly not a nice part to have COVID-19 happening, but for meeting people across the world, it's been actually super useful. So at least there's that. So yes. Anyway, so we can't do that, but we can do this together. So let me talk about what AMP is for a minute or two. As you know, my name, here I am, I'm Ben. I work at Google, I work on the web, try to make it easier to use for users and faster for users, but also for developers, because making a good site can be pretty hard and we think it should be easier. So I'm working on some of those things. And also I live near New York, I live in New Jersey. So here I am, hello. Okay, anyway, this is basically, what this really is a compression of a thing we have online. We have these 3 courses on our website at amp.dev. And if you want, I'm already going to deviate from those slides. The very first thing over here, you can always go here afterwards and try these yourself. We made these 3 courses that teach you how to use the web, how to develop for the web using AMP. The beginning course, which we're going to do today in a very compressed version. The intermediate course, which is more about interactivity in AMP. The advanced course, which is more about data binding, state variables, more advanced interactions with AMP. We have a lot of other educational things on our site. Tutorials make things like AMP stories, which are a thing now, like the story experience that uses AMP on the web, to use AMP for email, which is a thing, to make PWAs with AMP, to use JavaScript in AMP, which we're not going to discuss today, various topics. Also, I tend to speak very fast, which is bad. If I'm going too fast because English is not your first language, please yell at me. I can go slower. I just tend to get excited that I forget. So this is not good. If I go too fast, let me know. If you have questions, again, please let me know. So, okay, so this AMP thing, what is AMP? Why does AMP exist? Because the web often is too slow, unfortunately, and hard to use for people. Websites are wonderful. The web's an incredible thing, wonderful, but often sites are slower than they have to be because people have too much JavaScript on their sites, too much CSS. They have a lot of third-party things going on. And the problem is that unless you've got like a really nice phone and on a really good connection, you might have a slow experience. So many people have 4G connections, have a nice iPhone or a Galaxy or a Pixel, something fancy. In that case, it isn't quite the same problem. Maybe your site takes 4 or 5 seconds to load instead of 1 second to load. This is irritating. People see a site loading slowly and they don't trust it as much. They feel like it's a bad experience after a while, but it's not so bad. The many users out there don't have 4G connections. You may have a 3G connection. You may be somewhere that's far from a city. You could be on a train. You could be in a country where 4G is not as common. And in fact, the latest stats that I saw showed that the average site takes 12 seconds to load over 3G. And also that 40% of connections worldwide are over 2G networks. So it's still very common to have slower connections. Also, most phones aren't that high powered, and most phones that are sold that aren't the fanciest, latest phone, JavaScript runs much more slowly, sometimes 10 times more slowly. So there's a lot of reasons to make a site that even though maybe it looks good on your desktop computer, if you go somewhere else in the world or somewhere else, even in your city or where you live, people may have a slower connection. So the overall point is, don't make this guy here stare at his phone, waiting for your site to load, because you can see he's taken up smoking and drinking to cope with the stress of watching your site load so slowly. So to make his life longer, you must speed up your site. Of course, it can be hard to do this, and this is one of the goals of AMP, is to make it not as hard, to make a good, beautiful, fast site. Other things that the web may do that aren't desirable, sometimes we mentioned slow loading before, also sometimes you're looking at a page and it loads up and you try to do something and nothing happens because JavaScript is still loading or executing, which can block the browser from doing anything. So maybe you're pressing a menu button or something and nothing's happening for a couple of seconds. Maybe you can't scroll for a half a second. These all are bad user experiences. Something else AMP does also to make things easier, the third thing there is to avoid the problem where you're looking at a site and you're starting to look at content and suddenly things will move around. Because an image loads in, and the image loads, all the text moves around. Or worse yet, an ad loads in with a video or something, and suddenly you're watching this video or something you don't really want while text all shifts around on the screen. It's called layout stability, and this can also be annoying. Yes. Or ads appear that block you from using the site at all, or a big pop-up appears, big thing says, hey, subscribe or buy something. So AMP actually makes all those things better. The goal of AMP was to make the web just better to use for people. And what is AMP actually? Well, it's a few things. First of all, HTML, was invented, I think 1989, like 31 years ago, as a document description language. HTML is full of things like, this is a paragraph, this is in boldface. There are no tags for things like, this is a menu, this is an interactive image slider where you move images around the screen, because those things didn't exist back then. As web's gotten more powerful and more capable, people have used JavaScript to make all these things happen, often third-party JavaScript libraries. And the goal of AMP is make all those things easier to use and avoid all the JavaScript by making those things part of HTML. So what AMP does is adds to HTML the tags it doesn't have, but maybe it should have, to make interactive websites possible. Finally, AMP has these rules it sets out. And if you follow the rules of AMP, which you don't have to do, if you follow AMP's rules, you get this benefit of what's called the AMP cache. And I can show you an example of this. Sorry you can't see or hear anything. Everyone can hear things, hopefully, except for some people. Sound is okay. But this is being recorded, though. So yeah, you can probably hear this later. Yes, thanks for mentioning that, Maria. So this is actually what AMP looks like in Google search. By the way, AMP is a project that Google started, but it is not run by Google. It belongs now to the OpenJS Foundation. It's an open source project. Actually, I can show you that too. We can just be casual here. Let me just show you our friend GitHub. You can see here, this is the AMP project. Anybody can take part in this project and contribute to AMP, and developers around the world help make AMP. Again, most of the full-time engineers are from Google, but it is an open source project that now is part of the family of projects of OpenJS. So if you want to change things in AMP, go ahead and just suggest a change and go ahead and do it. Anyway, here's how AMP looks in the world of Google search. So I am going to now simulate a mobile phone here using Chrome. I guess I'm going to be an iPhone today. And let's go to google.com, which is this website that has search on it. Look for something that's in the news. What could be in the news today? Most things in the news are negative today. It's hard to have things
but
that aren't negative.
Yeah, in the US, big things are happening. So
well, that's true. We can mention Kamala Harris, can't we? I was going to mention hurricanes. We had some storms last week that knocked down a bunch of trees. We lost power for a whole day. But let's look at, this is some news that's hopefully neutral. So here she is. And now there's things about her. Okay, so these things over here, do you see this? This is called the Top Stories Carousel. And everything in this carousel is a news article that is an AMP article. These little lightning bolts here mean AMP. And down here further, you may see more things with lightning bolts. Maybe we're not going to, because Kamala Harris is a person and Google has certain things for people. Usually there's various things here like this, or news carousels there that are actually AMP articles. So if you click on one of these things here, it opens usually very fast in this thing called the Google AMP Viewer. And there you see in here is this article. It loaded very quickly because it's AMP, and also because in some cases, Google search knows AMP is fast and it can control how things load and what loads. So it will actually preload the article in an iframe in the background. So it's already there. You tap on the link on your phone, it appears almost immediately. So on a 2G connection even, things can appear in half a second. So yeah, sorry I'm going so fast, I can go slower. Thanks for reminding me to speak slower. We can look at this article over here. HTML, this is Google's AMP viewer. If we actually just look at the article itself, we're going to now just look at the AMP article from the BBC. We'll see a few things here that are unusual. Notice the HTML tag here has an attribute called AMP after it. That means it's an attempt to make a valid AMP article. Notice AMP version over there. all these AMP classes here on the body, and things like AMP geo, which is a geolocation component, AMP consent, which is for a paywall. All these things here are AMP things. So this is an example of an AMP article in the world. Now that I'm here, I'm going to stay over here in a minute in this little browser window. AMP also works on mobile and desktop devices. This site is called amp.dev. This is the site that the team I work on makes, and it is our documentation site for AMP. We'll be using it today. It's also made with AMP as well. Notice the AMP things here in the HTML. If I go to a normal desktop view, it still works. So AMP is very good at making responsive sites. It's usually used for mobile sites, but it can be used for desktop sites as well. And today we're just going to make an AMP site that's responsive. So that's a bit about AMP. One more thing about AMP that's important. Yeah, we said this before already. The caching of HTML happens by, yes, I should mention also that if you follow the rules of AMP, making what's called valid AMP, then web spiders like Google's are out there and will find your HTML and cache it and serve it from, in this case, Google servers, so they load extra quickly. So the combination of less JavaScript and less CSS and the AMP cache makes sites a lot faster. We said this before, Oh yeah, here's AMP. Here's how it looks in real life. So this is an example of AMP. AMP YouTube is not an HTML tag, but it's a tag that AMP adds to HTML through using web components. And some things here will look familiar, some things look different. For example, width and height are standard HTML attributes, but AMP requires this in most cases if you want to have valid AMP, because one of the goals of AMP, remember, is to leave space for everything so that when ads load in or images load in, they pop into the space that's reserved for them, so that things don't move around the screen, because space is reserved for everything in advance. It makes things faster. That means things just pop into their spaces and things don't shift around. So in most cases, not all cases, you're required to use width and height for anything in AMP in advance. Also, this layout tag here, this layout attribute is responsive, not standard HTML, but AMP has a built-in system of layouts. So in this case, our YouTube embed would be responsive automatically. So by using layout equals responsive, if you have a YouTube video and its container expands, YouTube video will expand automatically. If the container shrinks or the browser window shrinks, so will the YouTube video. And finally, data video ID over here is not a standard HTML attribute, but it is the ID of the video, and it makes this actually show a video. That's kind of what AMP is. There's a lot of stuff. Do you have any questions so far about all of those things?
Yes, we have a question over here. We have a Julian is asking if the server-side rendering is inbuilt.
Yeah, that's not really part of AMP because AMP is a front-end framework. So if you have a server, you're using a framework of some sort like React or Preact or whatever, server-side rendering is totally possible to do. The server still belongs to you, just that you're going to be spitting out at the end, instead of HTML, this AMP HTML with AMP extensions in it. I think when you start using it, it'll make some more sense.
Okay.
Any more questions about what AMP is or why it might exist?
No, I think
we'll try it out.
Excited to try it out and see it in action.
Yeah, okay, let's skip a couple of slides here. As long as you know HTML, you can do this workshop. JavaScript can be used in AMP, but you don't have to. CSS is still used in AMP because it's just websites with HTML tags in them that are AMP tags. But in this case, in this workshop, the CSS we're going to use already is built into the project. Let's try it out. So we're going to be using Glitch for this, as I was saying before, so we can do this online coding and we can share our projects. You don't have to use Glitch. You can use your own IDE or editor and your own web server, but Glitch is kind of convenient. So if you go to this link over here, which I'll copy into the chat, this is the starter code for this workshop. Oh, thank you. You're okay. Maria already has it there. And you'll see here this thing, you'll see this preview of the site as it is right now. You can see it's about cheese bicycles, which are very important for reasons I can't really explain. And you can view the source of it. What you want to do is go to a button that says, it'll say click to remix. Mine says remix this because I own this project. I think it'll say click to remix or something to remix. And that remix is Glitch's cute way of saying, copy this project, make my own project. So go ahead and click to remix it, and you'll get something like
your
this.
own.
Remix your own, thank you. And you get like this. This is my version now, which I did before I started this workshop. Glitch chooses cute words to name each project instead of a long base64 encoded thing. So mine is called West Catnip Bathroom. That's weird, but that's what it chose for me. Instead of Showy Way, it's now West Catnip Bathroom. If you have any trouble doing this, let me know. Hopefully you won't. You can see here in your project, if you click around a little bit, there's a few things you'll use. I'm not going to use the server, not going to use this node stuff over here. All you're going to use is this assets folder and the public directory. And in there, all you're going to use is index.html. As long as you can find public index.html, this is your HTML you'll be modifying today to try out AMP. And over here also, this assets folder will be useful. This contains images in this case. So to use the images from this project, you simply click on an image like this, and you'll see the image. You get bigger in this Lightbox Zoom experience here, and you'll see this long, actually hexadecimal looking URL here. This will actually get you the image. If you copy this and use it, say in a web browser, you will see the image. In this case, a cheese bicycle. So that's that, and that's this. Anyone having trouble doing this? Have you all got your projects here remixed and glitched?
Feel free to share if you have any issues with the link or anything.
Yeah, don't be shy because you're on video. No one can see you. You can just say what you're doing, and it's fine.
Yes.
I'm going to assume you've all done this. So the glitch editor, we looked at this a minute ago. There's index.html, images, we just did that. Oh yeah, this is not required. If you want to make valid AMP, this is kind of useful. Now, valid AMP, again, is when if you follow the rules AMP sets out for a site that's accessible and that is going to be fast, you get this privilege of being put into AMP caches and extra speed. It's totally possible to use AMP that isn't valid. And actually, this is not part of our workshop today, but as Google search is changing how it works, there's more and more reasons to not bother with valid AMP at all, except for the speed aspects of it. But if you're curious about valid AMP, it can be useful as a way of debugging your site especially. I would go ahead and try to make a valid AMP project. Yeah, you can go to, well, yeah, I think in there, if you go there, you'll probably get the Chrome extension link somewhere. That's true, there it is. You can add this extension if you're using Chrome, which maybe you're not. You can add this extension to Chrome, which I have installed. You don't have to. There's two ways to do this. Way number one is the extension. You may see up here in my screen at the very top, there's a lightning bolt up there that's gray. That actually is the extension. If I go to a valid AMP site, like amp.dev, which is valid AMP unless you have a problem, it turns green. So you know you have valid AMP. If it's not valid, it'll turn red. And I've got some projects here that are not valid AMP. This one has one error on it. And unfortunately, you can't see it on the call because Meet will not show you the pop-up because it's an extension. But I get a little message there saying something is wrong with the site. However, if you're not using Chrome or don't want to install the extension, that's okay. If you instead append to the end of your URL #development equals 1, and then reload the page, you will now see errors in the console. And there is the error. It's the error because the relative URL is disallowed because if I was using an AMP cache, the AMP cache would have a different domain, and thus relative URLs would fail. So it warns me about this so I don't have a problem in my production code. So I'm going to copy this a little bit here. Thank you. Maria, you are way ahead of me on all of these things. That's the other way to look at whether your AMP is valid AMP or not. Does it show if you view and developer tools on Chrome? If you do use developer tools and do open the console and do use #development equals 1, you'll see errors like that. If you don't use #development equals 1, it won't show you any errors. It'll just mention, hey, powered by AMP, that's great. So I think the extension actually is a faster way to do it because you see errors immediately. It's kind of convenient, but it's not required. Let's go back to our project over here, closing all these things, closing the original one. Here's the project. There it is. Beautiful. Okay, let's go on here in the deck. So we said this before, I think. I'll say it again. To make valid AMP, you must have in the HTML tag over here either a small lightning bolt emoji or the word AMP. That tells everyone that's a sense to make a valid AMP page. A few more things are required. I'm not going to go over those things now in detail, but these things are required by AMP to make your page good on all devices. For example, UTF-8 encoding is a good idea, so it requires that. This meta tag for viewports makes your site better responsively. And then also there's this boilerplate that AMP uses, so AMP can control the page. There's ways to also get rid of this we're not going to discuss now, but essentially this will hide your page until AMP JavaScript has loaded, and then you can then view your page. AMP uses JavaScript to make it work. Again, it discourages you writing your own JavaScript, but AMP uses its own JavaScript to make things happen on the page. But in most cases, JavaScript you write must be done in certain kinds of ways to make it fast. And then also to make things fast, AMP wants you to put your CSS in the style AMP custom tag over here and to put it in line. That way, your page can be rendered after a single network call instead of calling up for CSS files, which can cause delays. It's all in line over here. So after all this stuff over here, all the CSS at the very bottom, there's the actual project. And this is just standard HTML. So our first goal we're going to do is to convert this into AMP. Let's go back to our deck over here. Our very first AMP component is called AMP image. AMP doesn't replace a lot of standard tags. I think it replaces about 2 tags. It replaces the image tag though with AMP image. The reason being that AMP image lets AMP control how the image loads and make sure that when it loads into its spot, things that move around the screen. And also lets you make images that are responsive automatically. And finally, it has built-in features, like for example, lazy loading is built into AMP. So if there's images on your page that are down there somewhere below where you can see, they shouldn't be loading while things up here are loading because it slows down what you can see. So instead, AMP automatically lazy loads. So as you're scrolling up towards those things, AMP realizes, oh, they're going to come up pretty soon, and loads those things then. This makes things faster. So for various reasons, AMP wants you to use AMP image instead of image. Notice, though, that our project here has image. So our first goal is to change this to AMP image. So the very first thing we're going to do. So to see what you're doing here, go to the show link over here, and you can show what the site looks like. A new window is nice because then you can actually test for AMP validity. There's actually an error here. You guys see over here, there's one error. If I open the console and append development equals 1, you can see it in the console. There's an error here. AMP validation had errors. The tag image, blah, 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 blah. Did you mean AMP image? So our first task is to fix that by making it to an AMP image. So is there a slide for this? Oh yeah, there's some components. All these things here. Oh, sorry. By the way, I forgot to mention that certain AMP components do require you to add some JavaScript at the top of the page here to make them work. Like, for example, the Twitter, AMP Twitter embed wants you to add a bit of JavaScript there for Twitter to work. So certain AMP components require some extra JavaScript, and some of them don't. Anyway, I'm way ahead of the deck here, sorry. All right, so our first goal here is to change the image tag to AMP image. All you have to do for this to work is change IMG to AMP IMG and then close it. And to add the size. And the size should be 640 by 480. So I'm going to actually do this myself over here. I'm going to pull this out of the presentation and ask you to do this. Here, I pull this out of there too. And then when you've done this, you can put your Twitch URL in the chat, and we can all admire your work. So again, the task here is just to change image to AMP image and add the width and the height attributes. And then go ahead and close the AMP image tag. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm going to mute for a minute and do this, and if you get it to work, feel free to post your link in the chat to your glitch. If it isn't working, that's okay too. Post it in the chat. We'll try to figure out what went wrong. I'm now going to mute for a minute.
Remember, you can share your link in the chat and we can check your work.
Okay, thank you for sharing yours there. Let's take a look at this over here. That's a winner. It's valid amp. Very good. I'll show you my project too. Oh, your image disappeared. Yeah, these things happen sometimes. Here's mine. So mine works. The successful pleasant gliel. I'm pronouncing it in the French way. And yet your image is back. It's there, but it's still not valid amp yet. So something is still missing here from this one. You can see what it is. I think you must have undone your change. Yes, we can debug with you. So you must have undone your change because it's back to what it was before.
Yeah.
Anybody else have this? Having a problem? I know the group isn't that big, but this is why you have to do this workshop, because if we all take part, we can all do this. Don't be scared.
Yes, don't be scared.
It's not hard.
We have.
I'm scared. Well, I'll show you what I did over here. I think Maria did too, probably. I just changed image to amp image and added width and height. That was it. And now it's valid amp. So here's the solution.
Yes.
We change image to amp image, add width, add height, close the tag. That was that.
The width and the height attributes, you don't have to put the pixels or anything. You don't have to put px or something like that. No.
That's right, just the number over here. And this is just standard HTML stuff.
HTML attribute. Okay, got it.
Yeah, these are all, the key with AMP is just HTML and JavaScript and CSS. It's just that there's some extensions and some techniques you're supposed to use for best performance. You can change those things to something else. Yeah, I can make this anything. I can make it width equals 40. It would just look
weird.
A little weird. Okay, it looks like Julian may have a result over here. I'm going to show. Okay, yours is a little taller than mine. Probably your dimensions are different in some way, but it works. View the source for this. This is the slowest way to do it. I should just look at your source in the browser. But here we are. Yeah, your height is just kind of bigger than mine is, so it's going to look a little bit extended. It's better to use quotes around everything. Using quotes is HTML standard, but this still works apparently because you did it, and there it was. But the usual HTML thing is attribute, equal sign, a quote, a value and close the quotes. Okay, I'm going to close that and that and that. And let's do one more thing over here with this image. So far, it's not that exciting because we've got an image that's not better than before. It's an AMP image, so it will look better when it loads, load more clearly and cleanly, but it seems the same to us now. But check this out over here. Notice that the image as we have it is not responsive. So it's now off the screen with this smaller screen here. If I have a bigger screen, here, let's do this. It's going to be on the screen, but for smaller devices, it's going to be invisible. So wouldn't it be cool if we make that responsive instead? Well, we can. So go over, did I just close my own? I just closed my own project. Why did I do that? I got to open it again, hold on. West Catnip bathroom. There we are. So go to your image over here, add one more thing to it. Add layout equals responsive. Can you guys all see that? I think I have it on a slide too, to make it bigger. Yeah, there it is.
Yes.
Add layout equals responsive to it. And it should instead be responsive. Let me show you how it looks now. This is the wrong one. I'm looking at someone else's project, I'm sorry. Let's show my project here, okay. And look at this, it's responsive. So with AMP, making responsive sites can be simpler. I see that Maria also has done this. And is yours responsive too? Yeah, look at that. Well, I guess it is.
It has some glitch. Yeah, it has something. It doesn't look as good as yours.
I think your size is different than my size.
Maybe the size?
Yeah, let's see. Actually, what you have to do over here, you have to close the AMP image tag. So this is an HTML thing. You have to also, at the end of AMP image, close it with this close AMP image thing here.
Yes, I heard
it's
that.
Not a thing that is required by AMP specifically, but it is a thing that HTML requires with most tags. Otherwise, it's going to behave a little strangely in ways that are hard to predict. So that's images. Any questions on that?
Yes, it worked. I have a question, because you can make it responsive, and of course you guys have some JavaScript embedded there. But what if you want in a project, I don't know, your view on the mobile be, I don't know, the image one on top of the other one, but in desktop you want some other layout. When you're making it responsive, you're only like making it actually moves nicer, but can you make that many modifications, that many, like particularities? I don't know.
Just use CSS so you do what you usually do, and all those usual techniques will work. The responsive thing is useful, but sometimes you want to just use a fixed size image and just have CSS handle everything. There's actually a lot of options with AMP you can use for layout. I tend to use, honestly, either responsive or fixed, but there's a lot of different options. In general, you just rely on CSS for things like you always do with sites. But look at this over here, various kinds of layouts that exist. So sometimes you want to use fill, or you can fill the size of the container. Fixed means ignore the container and just make it always the same. There's a fixed height, the flex item, there's for flexbox, there's responsive. A lot of options out there. Number bootstrap. So actually, Julia, media queries are still a good idea because you still want to make different size images for different devices. So some of those things are still true. AMP also supports source set in its own way, like a kind of a more browser consistent way. So yeah, Bootstrap, you may still want to use Bootstrap, but the problem with Bootstrap is it's pretty big, and AMP wants you to have CSS less than 75K. Often Bootstrap is bigger than this. You can use less Bootstrap, make it smaller. But yeah, you may not use Bootstrap as much because AMP does some things for you. If the site is complicated, though, then CSS is still going to be a thing you have to face. So I don't want to overpromise what AMP actually does. It does a few things to make layout easier, but in general, like if you look at sites with AMP, they're full of CSS because That's just part of the web. I don't want to promise too much here. Make this a little bit more the size of the screen. Okay. All right, so that's images. Let's get a little more advanced over here. Let's embed a video. Yeah, it makes things a little easier for you. It tries to generate up those various things, make your job as a developer easier. So the more advanced things it does for you, and you can worry about making your site look nice and your content. So let's get a little more elaborate. Not that elaborate. This is just our first other kind of component that involves a new attribute added by AMP. We're going to put a video on our site. We're going to use for this the AMP YouTube component we saw before. This is an extended component. So for the first time, we have to add a bit of JavaScript that AMP provides you to make this work. And we also need the ID of the video. And in this case, this is one with Paul over here. This is the ID of this video. To find the ID of the video, you can go to YouTube and find some sort of video. I think I made this video, so this is me. And just look at the URL here. See this V equals something at the top? That is the video ID. If you provide that, you can embed any video on YouTube you want to. Also, AMP has components for Vimeo and a lot of other video players as well. Everyone seems to know what YouTube is, so I use that. So our next task here is to add an AMP YouTube component to our site. If you use a size 480 by 270, and it will look nice, there's video ID you can use. You can use something else. You can make it responsive or not. And it's going to require a script tag. So what is the script tag? To find this, we're going to use the documentation. So go to amp.dev and search for AMP YouTube. Like this. And you get to look at the documentation here. It talks about how to use the component. The first thing at the top here is required scripts. Oh, this is good. I asked them to make the scroll bar bigger. They just did this. So now you can scroll better. How exciting is that? We made this change just last week. Anyway, if you go over here and copy this, you can then use the script in your own HTML. Of course, documentation is full of things about examples here. You can copy the examples if you want to, about data, video ID, all these things. All the attributes that are used by YouTube are shown here, and how to make it valid. But valid is pretty easy. Anyway, so our task over here is just to go add this at the bottom of our site, the AMP YouTube component, specify the size with width and height, specify data video ID, and also include the script. Are there any questions about that? This is more stuff than we did a minute ago, but not a lot more stuff. And again, we're here to help. So I'm going to mute again. Go ahead and try this. If you have questions, ask the question.
Trying to find a YouTube video. So the script tag, we have one question here about the script tab.
Okay, you want to find this over here and copy it, and then you want to put it into the head of your HTML document near the other script tag somewhere. Anywhere in the head should work though. I can show you. Yeah, that's actually an important part, because if AMP had all the JavaScript for all the components in the main AMP JavaScript, it would be huge. So you add those things in as you use them. I'll show you how it looks over here in mine. So here's my script tag for, this is the main JavaScript for AMP that makes AMP run. And then here's the YouTube JavaScript. In fact, I can copy it over here. You can just grab it from here if you want to.
Yes.
And this looks complicated, but they're always the same format. It's always custom element equals the AMP tag, and then the formula for the URL is always the same. Oh, and look at this. We have one. Look at this. XGBoost algorithm, machine learning. He's chosen the most advanced video I've ever seen in a workshop. I don't know what this even is. Nice.
I'm having an issue with
here.
it.
Yeah. I've done some neural net stuff, but not in quite a while. Very good. And is it responsive? Did you make it responsive? Let's see. Yes, you did. Look at that. See, that's the magic of responsive design. All right. Meanwhile, you're having an issue there. So let me pull mine out of here.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm missing or.
That's okay. It's usually easy to debug these things when you're experienced, but when you first do this, it can be super confusing because it's just, there's less stuff to do. So if you do the wrong thing, it's not going to work.
The idea, of course.
Well, okay, you got nice blank space, so that's half the battle. So all you need is a video to be there.
Yeah.
Be all set. Let's just do this in the same window here.
Yes, I'm missing the ID. The ID tag, it will be like data video ID. That's how it's called, the attribute.
Yeah, that's what I'm complaining about. Yeah, that's right. Let me just make this a little smaller here because the zoom is so big I can't really see anything. Sorry, this is kind of going to be smaller for you guys. And let's look what's happening here. Let's actually just search for it. I assume you've got AMP YouTube. There's the JavaScript. There's the CSS. And there's what you've done here. Interesting.
How is it called, the attribute for the ID? Yeah, I don't remember the exact name of the attribute.
So
it's called.
There's actually not a source. Yeah, don't use the source at all.
Okay.
Instead, you use data-video ID.
Okay.
Let me show you how. Oh. Let me show you the solution over here. It's just like this. See, we're on the right track. But instead of using the actual URL of the entire AMP, the entire YouTube site, you just use data-video ID. And then it can embed the YouTube video that way.
Okay, I think I got it.
It's simpler than that. Yeah. That looks promising. And let's see here. Yeah, look at this. Queen.
Something
I see a train, though, not a bicycle. That is bicycle theme. Although I see a train there, it is a bicycle song. I never knew what the song was really about. Why is it about a bicycle race? But there it is. Okay, good. All right. Anybody else? Let's keep on going. Yeah, don't forget the JavaScript there. We'll do a couple more of these things. Again, it looks like the group is kind of small. We'll do a couple more and we'll see how we do. So let's look at actually how to find other features with AMP. Let's say you want to make something else. How do you find components that actually do what you want? For example, an image carousel, also called an image slider, popular on websites. It lets you slide between different images with your fingers on a mobile device or with a mouse on a desktop device. It's a very common feature. That's called an image carousel sometimes. So actually, there's a component called AMP carousel. How do you use it? Well, You look at the documentation, ask questions like, so how do I use it? How do I customize this thing? How do I make it look different with CSS? Does it require its own script tag? Questions like that. So we're just going to go over here to the documentation, and please do this with me. Just cruise over here to the search, look for AMP carousel, and you'll see how this works. There's two versions. 0.2 is better than 0.1. We'll look at 0.2. Notice there's a required JavaScript there at the top, looking like that. And you can see how to use it over here. A couple of different types that you can use. It's not as complicated as many image carousels. It's supposed to be smaller and just cover the most common use cases. So if you use type equals slides, then you'll see one thing on the screen at a time, and then the image will just move to the whole area. If you use carousel, then things will kind of just go as they go. So here's an example of, I can't scroll. There we go. I think this should be slides. There's slides. What you see one thing at a time as you go through the fruits. And then carousel looks different. So it looks just like this, AMP carousel. And you'll see this with most AMP components. You have the width, the height, layout if you want to, and then something different like type, for example. And the AMP carousel slides between different objects. It can be images, it can be anything. The children of AMP carousel are what gets slid in between. They can be text, they can be videos, they can be images. In this case, we're going to use images. They're all AMP images, and they'll have the sources of the URL and width and height. So not much to do. You'll do a lot of width and heights here and a lot of layout types. That's it. More options here with AMP carousel. You can also add a loop. So it will then loop back and forth from the last one to the first one. It can autoplay, and you add these things as attributes if you want to. There's more advanced things here you can use when you're more advanced to actually force it to go to certain slides, handle events, and things like that. That's AMP carousel. Any questions about that?
No,
Again, if you're stuck.
It looks promising for some of, or nowadays you always use a carousel for something, and sometimes it's a pain to style it and just to make it work. Yeah.
It can be easier this way. I do like the slick carousel when I use JavaScript things, but this has a lot fewer options and it's a lot smaller, so it loads more quickly. So for a basic carousel, it's quite nice. And also the app team's always working on these things, trying to improve them, so they're working nicely across browsers and things like that. So we just had this looked a minute ago, AMP carousel, and then inside of it are images or something else. So your task now is to make your own carousel. So remember to use images that come with the Glitch project. You can click on assets and they pop up. Let me show you that over here. Let me close this and bring my project back over here. So again, clicking on assets in Glitch shows you the pictures we have here. Clicking on these things lets you see the picture bigger, and here's your URL to actually use it. What you're going to do here is add a carousel above your video and make it responsive if you want to. If you make a type equals slides, it will look nice like this. It will show one slide at a time. If you choose the size 412 by 309, it's going to look good in the site and with the CSS we provided you. And these three images look good, but any images really are fine. We know these images here are sized properly, but any image you want to use off the internet is totally fine. And when you finish this, also don't forget to use the JavaScript makes the component run. Yeah, exactly. The idea is to use less libraries and just use very small things. Any questions?
I'm gonna give it a shot. Everyone, let's give it a shot. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna mute and we'll all do it together. again, if you get it, feel free to stick your link there in the chat. If you have questions, do the same thing.
Almost there.
Wow, all right. Just for inspiration, look, here's mine. Of course, I've done this before, so I've got an advantage.
Okay, we have one question that if it's possible to integrate AMP with a GitHub page, you can host it in GitHub pages or anywhere, I guess. I don't know.
I'm not sure what the question actually means. GitHub pages, you mean like you host it on GitHub pages?
I guess that
Then
it
the
is
answer,
to be hosted in GitHub pages.
then the answer would be yes, because AMP is just web pages. So for example, this works in Glitch because it's just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you can host it wherever you want to, GitHub pages, whatever you want. The only thing that's special about AMP really is that it's got this, honestly, let me show you. It's just that it's got certain HTML and that contains, as part of it, certain tags up here. And you've got this JavaScript over here for AMP. You've got the CSS inline. Otherwise, it's just HTML. So it's web pages that are a little special, if that answers the question. And I see Maria.
It's down there, yeah, I guess.
There we are. Images. Very good. And error blocked by client. There's something from your browser that's happening. I'm not sure what that would be, honestly. Sounds like a browser thing or a browser extension video carousel. And maybe you've got something in your browser that's not making that load up or something. Let's look at this here.
Or maybe the script tag.
Yeah, I think the script tag is in the wrong place. If you look at the HTML here, you only have one script tag on top over here. And these script tags should be in the head. You put it in the body. Yeah, try putting it in the head, because that's what it expects. See if that makes it any better. I'm not sure why it's being blocked by the client. That's interesting. But yeah, I just put it up here. So here's all my script tags on top for YouTube and for the carousel. For me, for example. If you want to, Maria, as a bonus here, you could try to make it loop back after the last slide. So yours works beautifully.
Yeah. To make it go back, how, okay.
Exactly. So if you look at mine over here, if I go through here, keep on going, it loops around.
Yeah.
Look there in the documentation.
Checking that right now.
Yeah.
Loop. It's the loop, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. You add in the word loop, and it will all loop. Once you discover how to do things in AMP, they tend to be easy. Until then, it can be complicated. When you know what to do, then suddenly it becomes easy. Look at Julian, yours is still not working. Hopefully I'm saying your name right, not mispronouncing it. So
Okay, now
yeah,
work with loop. It's really easy, yeah. This
is you've got YouTube script in the head, but put the other scripts in the head. You've got to have actually I think you're missing the carousel script completely. So you've got to have the script over here, this one, in the head, because that makes carousel able to work. You've got looping there, Maria.
Yes.
Look at that. Or is that mine? That was mine.
That's yours, yeah, but mine is also working. So yeah, cheers to both of us.
So yours again here. Yep, there we go. All right.
And the carousel can be type slide, and what are the other types?
Only two options. There are slides and there's, I think, carousel, which means that you'll see a few things at once, unless the width's just set a certain way. So if yours are smaller than the width of the container, you would see probably two slides at once.
More images. Oh, okay, got it.
So Yoha or Joha, the answer is yes. AMP with GitHub pages, yes. It's just web pages, and it will work fine on GitHub pages too. Okay, I think only two of us actually are doing the workshop. I'm going to do one more of these things here, and I'll go over to questions. And if you want to do more of a workshop,
I know that some of other people are doing this, but are getting some errors. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, well, if you are, then let me know. We can always figure out what you're doing and try to help you get it right. Okay, thank you. So I'm sorry if I'm saying your names all incorrectly. I don't know if it's Yoha.
Yeah,
Joha.
you're doing great. I think it's
Joha.
Yeah.
Okay. Then let's see what's going on over here. Let's view it first of all. Okay, we're missing some things over here. So what has happened here? I guess you erased the original AMP image and the AMP YouTube. Those aren't there. The carousel is not appearing. Also, we've lost all the CSS. So there are a lot of styles over here before that aren't there anymore. I feel like you might have cloned the wrong project, because this looks different in some ways than my project does. You get this base styles thing over here. You may have cloned the wrong project. That's why it is going to look funny, because the CSS isn't there. Sorry, there's various projects there that are all look similar. Shoeiway was the one to do, but you can still look at this now. It may look a little funny, but it should still kind of work. Let's look over here at your carousel. Yeah, you're missing actually, you're missing a lot of things here. Yeah, I would start over, because you're missing the v0.js, you're missing the AMP JavaScript. So go back to the Shoeiway thing. I would start there, clone that. Can be a little confusing. All right, closing everything else. Let's do one more of these over here, and then we can have questions afterwards. So we've done the carousel. By the way, there it is. You're just putting width and height and layout everywhere, typical slides, and the loop word there makes it loop. And then inside the carousel are 3 AMP images with, again, width and height and layout. And there we are. It should have been responsive too. I didn't test that. See if this is responsive or not. Ooh, look at that. It's responsive. That's exciting. Okay. And there's the JavaScript you need. One more thing we're going to do here is learn how to find the component. You have to kind of look for things that match the description of what you're looking to do and try to find them. There is a reference here on the website. All these things on the left here are all a bunch of components. And looking through these things, find all kinds of useful things. Facebook comments, some special effects over here. I guess actually a gist for GitHub gist, if you like those kinds of things. A lightbox, Instagram embeds, even service workers for your PWA. What's this? It's new one to me. Oh, some sort of video called ISIL scene. I don't even know what that is. If things are missing that you need, you can also suggest them and add them to the open source project. You just have to get approval from people that run the project to do your component, and they'll give you some guidance, and there you go. Anyway, various components exist over here. And also, this is useful. There's various examples here which show you how to use things. So ISIL scene, what's that? Let's find an example for that. Oh, there's an example. That's not that exciting. Let's look at a better example. AMP accordion, I know, has examples that are useful. So you can see here, for example, this useful thing over here where it shows you how to use it. There's an accordion there. There's the code for the accordion. And we can also open this up in a playground, which always gets nicer all the time. Here's the code here in a playground. You can then make modifications and see your changes here on the right. And also you can simulate different kinds of devices. Here's an iPhone, for example. You can see error messages, validation errors that appear, for example. It's kind of nice for development, actually, for simple projects. So if I change something over here, if I change this to a bunch of not very awesome content, then it appears over there. So you can try things out in the playground and put them into your site. I'm going to leave this over here and do one final thing here. So we're going to add social sharing links. So you're going to try to look through the documentation and look for things that add social sharing links. Figure out the component to do this. And when you do it, it lets you add these nice looking, beautiful icons here on your screen to share things with. And you can do whatever you want to here. If you add email and Tumblr, LinkedIn, and Twitter, we know those all will look nice. If you use this class social bar in a div around those buttons, we have CSS in the project that will make it look all pretty and make them into circles. If you use the size of 44 by 44, it will also look nice. This is our next challenge, and I think probably our last challenge. Go to the documentation, try to find the components, see how to use it, add it to your site.
Great, great. Let's try it, everyone. Yeah.
All right, try it out. Let me know how it goes. Ask questions if you'd like. And I'll do it over here too.
I have something, but although I put like 3 components of the social share to try to put like different icons, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, only Twitter is appearing.
Okay. Why is that happening then? Oh yeah, there's Twitter.
Yeah.
So where's everyone else then? Let's look. I think the styles are right, which is good. Must have the div in there because it's a nice little circle. Amp social share. I think I know what's going on. Let's just look at the original. That looks good. That looks good. That looks good. I think it's very simple. You didn't close the first Amp social share. So that makes the first one, this is a child of that one then. This will be inside the other one. And that'll confuse things. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's it. They're all inside one of them now. Actually, if you look at this, you can see that they're all children.
Yeah.
First one. I'll show you mine over here. That's really all you have to do.
No. Oh.
Mine, they're all just consecutive here, and they're all just closed. By the way, this is the answer, folks. If you use div class equals social bar as we suggested, it will be styled nicely by our CSS. And then amp social share is the component name. You just hit the type, and you choose type, and it will display the kind you want.
Yes, it works. I wasn't seeing that close time, yeah.
Yeah, these things are easy to do. Oh yeah, look at that, very good. Yeah, these mistakes are easy to make. We did it. Anybody else working on this or have a question?
So what well, you want to put some functionality, of course, on that the buttons actually work. It's just like you would regularly do, like checking the API of Twitter or LinkedIn, just putting the actual link, or
click on one and try it. I can't show you what it is because you won't see the pop-up over here, but you'll get a pop-up which involves sharing your site with a certain person. So
okay, got it.
Click on it, you'll see a intent to tweet thing go up.
Yes, yes. Yes, it does. So yeah, it's looking for the actual information of the account, but yeah.
Exactly. You can do it that way, or you can just do, what do we do over here? I don't know what we do on this site. Is there anything on social sharing here? There isn't anything. Oh, there we go. These are, I think, just links over here. I bet these are just SVGs with actual A tags on them. Yeah. So this is just a simpler way to do it, or not simpler, a different way. Yeah. You just have a link over here, and inside the link is a picture, and then it just goes to a Twitter URL. But there's that way too.
But then if you want to put your own links or something like that, then you will have to put it like embedded on the tag.
If you want to use your own links, then I would do it this way instead. I would just use an anchor tag and put the href to your link, and then insert the picture itself. This is for a very, very specific use case of actually a sharing button where you share with these things.
Okay, got it. Hey, we have a question from here.
Yeah, making your content blog with AMP and a CMS. Which one to use? That's a good question. I'll give you two answers here. One is that WordPress has the best AMP integration of any CMS. So CMSs, you can always use AMP, but if you use a plugin for AMP, they aren't often very helpful. The plugin for WordPress, though, is made by XWP and Google working together on this, and does a lot of stuff for WordPress. So it does a lot of things for you. It helps you find plugins and themes that work with AMP, because many plugins use JavaScript, and thus they work with AMP, but they're not going to be valid AMP. So it helps you do that, helps you find JavaScript that you have to remove, helps you reduce your CSS so AMP will be happier with it. It's a good way to start. Honestly, though, it may be easier if you're making your blog to do something like 11D or Hugo, because these have more stuff built in for you. That would not be an AMP case at all, but they're pretty simple to build that way. So there's two possibilities. You can go the AMP way, which means doing more of it yourself, or you can use a static site builder of some sort. Actually, I admit to you, my own personal site, which I just made when quarantine started, is not AMP compatible. I use Hugo because it was easy to use and I could use it with a nice template that was built in. Actually, my next task is to go back and make it AMP compatible. It's going to require some work because it's got some JavaScript in it that's not hard to remove, but I have to remove it. I think it uses Bootstrap. So, oh, did that break? Oh, these broke. Huh. How did this break? Looked so good before. There we go. I just loaded wrong. Interesting. Anyway, so yeah, you can do it. I think if you want to use a CMS, WordPress is probably the easiest choice. And we have a new person up here with a project coming out of lurking there, and there is indeed a social sharing link. Very good. Looks good. I think you make the size 44 by 44. It'll be more of a circle, but that's not required, certainly. Let me just see what you did here. Social share, there's your JavaScript, very good. And there it is. You closed it, you made the width 60. If it's 44, it'll be a circle. Not required. And look at this, you actually use something I didn't use. You have hello world. So you're sharing some actual specific text and a URL. So looks good. If you add around it this div, classical social bar, it will be centered. Because we have CSS for that up here somewhere else. All this stuff here to make it centered, add a margin. And over here, this makes it look nice. Anyway, that is a solution. Here it is on a bigger slide. Width and height, all those things. And don't forget the script tag. So I think I'm going to stop here because we're already about an hour and a half in. And the last thing is more elaborate, and our group is pretty small. So I want to give you a chance to ask questions or make comments if you'd like to.
Perfect, thanks, Ben. I don't know if anyone else has more questions. I am certainly looking forward to start building more and checking out more of the documentation. I love the way that just with one simple attribute, you just make it responsive. So there are so many things that you, of course, need media queries, but you can just to begin with and to learn, especially a lot of beginners that we have in the community. It's an amazing tool. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, try it out. It makes things pretty simple for building sites. So try it out, see what you think.
Amazing. Do we have any more questions from anyone? Feel free to write them on the chat if you don't want to talk, if you're a little bit shy or something like that.
You can also do more of these things. I think I showed you before how to do this. Yeah, practicing is good. Here's the courses again. If you want to do this yourself, let me close DevTools and courses.
Oh, great.
Try this yourself. Just go to amp.dev/documentation/courses. Or you also can teach this if you want to. All the deck I used, or a similar deck, you can download over here with this button. Yeah, thanks a lot for being here, taking some time to try a new thing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joha. And let us know what you do. You can always say hello on Twitter or whatever you'd like. I am, here's my, that's for a different workshop, obviously. Trying to show my, hold on, Nuremberg. There we go. This is my Twitter, Ben Morse.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that everyone learned something really new today because it's not very buzz, but it's a great tool from Google. So yeah, thank you so much. Let me just do some closing remarks. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you for having me.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, we would like to invite you to our next meetup. first step for interview preps and open source, how to contribute it. So it's going to be a great space for interview preparation, tips for this crazy job market, and some guidelines on how to start contributing to open source, for example, this AMP project, and other opportunities within this field. So please feel free to join us on August 26th. Also, we want to let you guys know that in our social media we have different surveys, so it's very important for you for us to know your experience and have some feedback. If you have some interesting topics that you want to learn, or you know some speakers, so you yourself want to do a talk, please let us know. Don't forget to share all your experience in the social media, everything that you learn. If you took photos of the presentation or your own project, please share them. And thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you to all the participants. Thank you to the organizers, Joanna, Dunia, Luisa, because, well, they made it happen. And thank you, Ben, and thank you everyone for being here, uplifting women and helping us to close this gender gap that we have in technology. So important. So see you in the next talk, and stay safe. Goodbye.
Thanks for doing this. Thanks for doing this series, and thanks for having me. And yeah, stay safe out there.
Thank you so much, Ben. And
right,
bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.